Welcome to the JB Media Institute's Digital Drop-In. This is Sarah, lead instructor, and I'm here with Justin Bellarmine, co-founder.
Hey Sarah, hey everyone.
So today, if you're new to the calls, just a quick reminder that we're going to be sharing the slides, which you're seeing on the screen. You will get a copy of these slides along with a recording of this call. So any of the things that I suggest you read, the resources, the classes that we offer, as well as just the links that we share to learn more about this topic, you'll be able to get a copy of that along with the recording and click on any of those links. So definitely don't feel like you have to write everything down. Just know you'll have a copy of this that you can go back and refer to. And also, as we go through the call, I want to invite everyone, especially because it looks like we have a slightly smaller group than we usually have, to please feel free to chat in any questions you have about this topic. So as we go through the topic today, which is email marketing automation, I am going to share some stats and some just updated statistics for this year around email marketing in general. And then we're going to talk about what email marketing automation really is. But the second half of the call, I feel, is going to be more of a discussion where Justin and I just talk a little bit about our experiences with different types of email marketing campaigns, and especially talk about, I think, the importance of, before you enter into email marketing automation, really understanding kind of what it can do for you and then realizing it's kind of a customized situation these days. So just like all other parts of digital marketing, being able to take the same formula that other people use and just apply it and, get a ton of high open rates and a lot of sales is not really how it works. There's really no formula that people can use. I think it's important to sort of have goals, understand your audiences, and then figure out how to make your email marketing really exciting and awesome and valuable and relevant to them. So hopefully what you'll walk away with today is kind of an understanding of what email marketing automation is capable of doing, and some sort of tips and ideas from Justin and I about how you can really put together a strategy around how to use these types of tools in the future. So as I said, as we go along, if you have questions, please feel free to just chat them in. And there's also a question and answer section. I'll be paying attention to both of those as we go along. So again, for those of you who don't know us, I'm Sarah, and I'm here with Justin, just so you can get a visual on who we are. And the first question I wanted to start with today, that is something I talk to people about pretty much every month, is email dead? Do young people still use it? And so I wanted to quickly go through some of the most recent studies about this topic, because there is sort of I personally feel, a myth that Gen Zers and millennials don't use email as much, or that email is dead, that social media usurped it. And the truth is, I understand why people have that opinion, but at the end of the day, the data doesn't bear that that's the truth. And I think there's lots of reasons why that's true. But some of the key kind of pieces of data that I was able to easily pick up that was published this year are things like workers between ages of 25 and 34 spend almost 6.5 hours a day checking their email. More than 30% of them are checking their work email before they get out of their bed. So they're laying in bed in the morning, and the first thing they're doing is checking their email. Also, it was interesting, I read a whole article about how millennials and Gen Zers, which are the younger generation below millennials, that they have grown up with this idea of reaching inbox zero, which means every day I get to zero out my inbox and there's nothing in there. And that's a concept I learned about with a friend of mine who helps companies go completely paperless. Mm-hmm. And he's got a lot of strategies around this. But it was interesting to read how people my age, let's say in their 40s, we're willing to let our inboxes just be kind of like a tragedy where everything is in there and we're kind of like surfing through things. But younger generations don't do that. So I thought that was just an interesting tidbit, that younger folks are using email a little differently because they have access to chat, social media, and other things like that. I also thought it was interesting that people 34 and younger were more likely to feel comfortable using email at work and not talking face-to-face about things. And you see this great piece of data. About half of the people between 18 and 34 that they were surveying said that they would prefer to quit by email than tell the person face-to-face. And I just thought that was, again, an interesting thing to think about when we're talking about the younger markets. It's not that they don't necessarily use the technology that we use, but I think there's a different sort of way of interpreting that technology. Me, I would almost always quit face to face. I would feel weird just sending an email and being like, I quit.
Yeah.
I would probably say it, but it's sort of shifted over time that people feel more comfortable, using email. So more than 3/4 of teenagers are still using email and consider email a fact of everyday life. And in the US, 90% of people 15 and over are using email. So it's pretty much something that, touches on everyone in those younger generations. Some additional things that I thought were really interesting. One, the biggest reason, and when we say Gen Z, again, we're talking about people that are, 20 and under. They really are looking for those promos and special discounts. That's, I think, a big driver of their use of email. They know that that's a way a lot of brands are going to give them some sort of deal. They look for product recommendations. They do look for some company updates. The last thing on that list is like blogs and resources. So I think from a marketing perspective, it's hard because a lot of times we're sending emails with the idea of promoting our own blogs or promoting our own clickable resources. And we have to remember that's sort of low on the totem pole for those younger generations. I do think it's fascinating, though, that when you look at those younger folks, social media and email are about the same when it comes to what they prefer to engage with companies. What type of communications they like to have from brands and companies. There's a little bit of a preference for social media, but it's really not that big. So social media has not usurped email as a way of communicating by any means. You'll also see younger folks, they are purchasing things because of email 2 to 5 times a month, about 30% of them, at least one time a month, another 30%. So over half are definitely still engaging to make purchases. So I think when it comes to e-commerce, product-based companies, service-based companies, we want to think about that. And even though they are doing that interaction with brands, their primary use for email is really personal. So I just think that's an interesting piece because I think social media actually works the same way. They use social media to connect with brands, but the number one reason they use social media is typically personal. So I think that just reminds all of us from a marketing communication standpoint, we have to remember why people are on platforms using different types of technology. A lot of times it's not so we can sell to them. It's so they can interact with people they care about. How often do Gen Zers prefer to receive emails from brands? I thought this was really interesting because we've got 27.5% and almost 32% at once a day or a couple times a week. So again, that's about half really saying, or more than half really saying, I'm okay with regular communications. And so I think there's something about that younger generation being digital natives.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal for them to answer their email like 5 times. And look at things. They're used to surfing their phone all the time, surfing their tablets, whatever it is. And then you'll see even checking email. Again, there's this idea that younger folks just don't use email and ignore it. And I think there's always a portion of people that do that. But you've got basically, almost 80% of the people here that are checking it once a day or more than once a day. So I do think that we can't sort of count this out. Now, the flip side, which I think is something we all have to be aware of, is aren't people getting too many emails? The answer for me is absolutely yes. So in all email marketing, we're going to confront this issue, but I think this has to do with the quality of our content and not necessarily just feeling like email isn't sort of valuable, but understanding that we really have to give people something important for them to open up and pay attention to. So I thought it was interesting that 1/3 of people that were under 34, they all have this belief that they check their email way too often. They're kind of obsessed with it, and they should probably slow down. I think, again, this is something we see reflected in social media as well. A lot of people are starting to be more aware of the amount of time that they spend on their technology. And when we look at the statistics, we see that, if we predict based on 2017, 2018, predict forward, there are billions of emails sent every day and trillions upon trillions a year. So I think there's no argument that most of us feel sort of inundated with the amount of information that we're getting. So I just think this is where marketing and communications folks, we are really challenged. for what we're sending to people in their inbox to be something they can get really excited about. And if we're expecting them to sort of, not get an incentive or just care for the sake of caring about the topics because they're important, like I said, a lot of us will try to use our emails to promote our blogs. And unless we have a really active and engaged network, we're going to have a hard time getting people to click over onto things like that. And even the open rates, if we basically aren't kind of giving them a real reason to open, making them feel like opening that email matters to them, it's going to be hard because, the number of emails that are just flowing around the world is this, what I consider to be an insane amount. So in 2018, 281 billion emails were sent and received every day. That doesn't surprise me, but it does exhaust me.
A lot.
So I think we just want to be aware that everyone we're sending an email to is already over it. So we have to kind of approach it from that perspective. At the same time, though, is it still a valid marketing tactic? Absolutely. And you'll see this first stat that I have up here, email marketing has a potentially a 4,400% ROI. That means every dollar you spend on email marketing has the potential to bring you $44 in return. I've seen that number, now that's an average. That, of course, includes big to small companies. So smaller businesses, we might not be making that level of a return, especially if we're not selling online. It's a little bit different in how you can track that. So e-commerce, of course, is a big portion of this sort of ratio. And you'll see this number, depending on the study that you look at, ranges. But the sort of lowest numbers I've seen put this at about $35 per dollar spent. And the higher ones are up in the upper 40s. So I think, again, there's this sort of argument that email is dead, and yet a lot of businesses, once they figure out how to use email correctly and they are setting it up in a way that's really servicing people, that's when they see that bigger return. Also, you'll see that people who read drip emails, which is what we're talking about today, automated emails, they're far more likely to click on the links. So there's a 119% increase in click rate when you start using email automation. Now, this is based on doing it well and not doing it poorly and having something really relevant and exciting to give to people. But the people who are able to really kind of, utilize email marketing at a bigger level because they have larger networks of people, larger lists, they really see that they're able to drive a lot more revenue when they automate things and they make these plans to deliver email calls to action that are really valuable to people. So just to give us like a basic sort of baseline for what email marketing automation is, I know a lot of you are probably familiar with different things, but I wanted to sort of explain that email marketing automation basically is like all this lingo around it. And you'll hear all these different ways that people talk about it. And so we're going to go over some of those different ways. Yeah, and so this is actually what we're going to get into right now. So we're going to talk about the different words that are used to describe email marketing automation in just a second. So we'll answer that question basically in just a second when we get to the next few slides. So the first thing is, what's an autoresponder? This is something that's part of email marketing automation. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a sequence of emails that are automatically sent to a segment of your list. It's triggered by different events. So maybe somebody joins your list and they get an automatic sequence, an autoresponder. Maybe they're browsing certain pages and it triggers something. Maybe they've gone through the cart and abandoned it. Maybe they've downloaded an ebook that you wrote, or even made a purchase or made a donation on your website. All of those things can be set up with autoresponders, which are basically going to send out this different kind of information. And if we look at an example of this, because I've put some examples in here, this is like a really sort of a long, complicated campaign style version of an autoresponder sequence, right? So somebody basically steps into like the sales funnel in this email plan, and they get these different emails based on the different behaviors that they use. And so autoresponder campaigns are basically the same as what we call marketing automation. Right? So marketing automation is basically the same thing as autoresponders, and it's allowing you to create these emails, these personalized messages that go out in a certain order. And again, there's sort of a basic, even simple kind of version of the workflow that you can see. So these types of things can be really, really complicated or really, really simple, right? So here you just see this simple sequence where you basically send an email invitation to download the latest ebook. Once that person downloads it, it triggers a bunch of emails that sort of promote that next step for them. And all of this is also referred to as drip campaigns. So you can read a lot as well about drip campaigns. And you can see here, drip campaigns are also called drip marketing, automated email campaigns, lifecycle emails, autoresponders, marketing automation. So all of these things basically are in the same genre of strategy. And the goal really is that you're putting together marketing emails in a sequence that can be sent out automatically on a schedule, and hopefully they are prompting people to take different actions and eventually convert. And a lot of the campaigns out there that are related to automating emails have certain goals associated with them. So I think that's an important piece to remember. So some of them are lead nurturing. That means you've got people that you know are possibly interested in things, and you are working on pushing out a message to them to try to engage them with different aspects of sort of the customer journey, so that hopefully eventually you can like bring them into the fold and convert them into a customer or a donor. You can do sort of a welcome type of drip campaign. So again, that means it's the first time somebody's signed up, or it's the first time they've taken a certain action, and you want to go ahead and have 5 emails that go out after that to try to engage them at a deeper level. Some drip campaigns are just for engagement, so you're just trying to get people to, again, take further action past what they've already done. Some are educational, and you want to let people know how something works, or you want to let them know the story of a certain thing that you're trying to teach them about. If you're in the e-commerce world, abandoned carts are a really typical kind of drip campaign. That means if I put everything in my cart and I leave, I then get an automated email sequence to try to get me to come back and make that purchase.
Mm-hmm. You have to have their email address. They either have to be a previous customer or someone who's filled out some sort of form before, and you have that, you're tracking them from that point forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
One thing I wanted to add, and this is pretty self-evident in everything you've said, but the way that automation and drip campaigns differ from general email marketing newsletters is that some event triggers them to start getting the emails, and then they're getting a specific sequence of emails that's based on their action that they took, and it's timed based on when they did it. So if one person signs up for your form today, they might get the autoresponder today, and in 3 days, and in 2 weeks from now, if someone else signs up for that same form, they would get the email the day after and 3 days later. And it's not like you're emailing your entire list that sequence.
Yeah.
That would be more like a campaign, a newsletter campaign, or just a marketing campaign if it goes to everybody. Mm-hmm. Whereas automation is triggered by some activity.
Yes.
And you have to be, basically, at some point in the process, you have to capture their email and be tracking their activity from that point forward. Mm-hmm. It's possible to do a long-term drip campaign based on only one interaction. Like they sign up, they download a guide, or they just fill out your general form, and you can then trigger some long sequence of emails that they get based on that. It gets more complicated when you start having logical decisions after the initial email, like continue sending them these emails until they purchase, and then don't send them the other emails. That would be like an additional layer of logic. Or depending, they can get really complicated. You can send them a different email depending on which link that they clicked in one of the earlier campaigns. Yeah. It can be a choose your own adventure style campaign. It takes a lot more work to set those up. Yeah.
No, but I really appreciate you making that distinction between the two, because you're absolutely correct. It's really important to know this is different than sending a newsletter. This is really about you're getting them to take an action, and that action, or what we call an event, basically triggers out a series of emails. And the cool thing is some of the systems that are out there now have certain things built in. So for instance, I know a lot of email marketing systems now, if somebody hasn't opened your email in the last 3 times you sent it, you can actually have it identify that and then trigger out a bunch of emails to try to re-engage them, right? So that's what the re-engagement piece is. So sometimes they have built-in things, and then sometimes you're actually customizing what the sort of steps are in that sequence. So as you start to dig into this, you find there's some sequences that are typical, that are built into systems, that make it a little easier to kind of figure out how to identify people that aren't really taking action, and how can you promote that that, but most of the time they've done something, downloaded an ebook, added something to their cart, signed up for something, or whatever it is, like you said, clicked on a certain link, clicked on a button. And to your question out there, which is, do you have to have their permission to drip campaign them? Absolutely. You actually have to have people's permission to email them at all. So there's no way in which you would collect emails and just start sending out drip campaigns to people. Really what you'd want to do is, if you have, let's say, emails that you're collecting some other way, you want to make sure that you reach out to those people. They have the chance to opt in. And from there, you can promote them doing different things. And if they do certain things, they get these automated emails that tries to really lead them through a process, or, like I said, walk them through part of the customer journey.
Yeah, technically, I mean, it's complicated and nuanced, but technically, if you have permission to send someone an email, you can start them on a drip campaign, and as long as every email you send has a really easy way for them to opt entirely out of your email, then you're pretty much okay based on the U.S. laws.
Yeah.
You might be in violation of international privacy laws based on newer laws, where you have to really give people permission for every single kind of marketing you do to them.
Yeah.
Whereas in the U.S., it's just like you have permission to send them emails until they revoke that permission.
Yeah. Except in some of the changes going on in California.
That's true.
Which we do have to be thoughtful about, that one state right now, which seems to be working towards adopting more of a GDPR approach. And so, that's an interesting thing with email privacy right now, is we've got some states initiating privacy similar to what the Europeans are doing. So I do think, to Justin's point, I think it's really important in that first welcome email that people have a completely clear way to opt out. And because I work with lots of nonprofits and other people who are, let's say, collecting emails on a sheet in person, we always have an area that allows them to choose to be in the newsletter or not. And we'll promote that to them while we're talking to them at our booth, but we want to make sure that we have a legitimate thing that says, we agreed when we gave you our email to let you put us into your email marketing kind of campaigns. And Caroline, I see there, can you send email to invite them to subscribe?
You can't technically send a mass communication to emails you scraped, or like, if you can't go through a bunch of websites, find their email address, put them in a newsletter, and then send them a newsletter, ask them to subscribe.
Exactly.
You can send a personal message to someone and say, I'd like to add you to my newsletter list, is that okay? Or, I'd like you to add you to your newsletter list. If you're interested, click here to subscribe. That is allowed, but that's a one-to-one communication. You can also have a sign-up form at an event, at a table, and as long as it's communicated clearly that by adding themselves to the list, they're agreeing to get emails from you, you can add them to your newsletter.
Yes. And I think the key thing to understand is that the truth is, you can do whatever you want in essence when you're sitting in your office. There's no email police there telling you what's right or wrong. The key thing that happens is, if you are collecting emails in any way and then you sort of add those people automatically and sort of send them out an invite in a mass email way, where you're going to run into issues is if any of those people report that as spam. That's where you run into major problems, because I feel like once somebody has reported your newsletter as spam, that can trigger a lot of problems about whether or not you're showing up in inboxes overall, especially if they have a Gmail. Gmail is getting really smart about throwing things into the spam and junk mail folder based on people's reaction to what they see. So again, it's really, I think, about being cautious that you don't put yourself at risk. So it's important, I think, if you're collecting things in person, to just communicate to people that you're going to reach out to them after this. And so if they know that clearly, then hopefully when you send that invite in some way, it's going to be good. And absolutely, I feel if you're going to invite people and you've told them that they can expect that invite, not only do you have to give them the option to opt out, it has to be obvious. You can't hide it in the email, especially in welcome emails and telling people, hey, we're so glad that we connected with you. We're so glad to have you part of our list. If you don't want to be part of it, you can opt out here. I think that has to be up front and center. And the truth is, you don't want people in your list who don't want to be there. Right? So if you're building a list and half of them don't want to be in the list and don't care what you're saying, then your list isn't actually very valuable. So I think it's better to make that opt out really, really clear at the beginning. But that's a great question. So I want to talk with Justin a little bit about building the list, because I think that's something that, email marketing automation is great, But if you're not growing your list on a regular basis, if you're having trouble getting people to sign up, then you have sort of solved that problem in some ways. And I think there's a number of different ways that you can do it. The one I want to start with is just that Justin has handled a lot of contests and kind of these bigger sort of events that maybe you're only doing that contest once a year, but it's really geared towards building the list itself. So can you just share, like in the next 5 minutes, kind of how you've gone about that and, just give us that bigger perspective. We're going to talk about some of the smaller contest ideas that are out there, but I really think Justin's done this amazing job of taking some lists kind of from, doubling and tripling them pretty quickly because you really put together a really awesome contest.
Yeah. So, real quickly before I start, if you have a website that has a really high amount of traffic, there's quite a few things you can do to capture more of them as email subscribers. You can do like a really creative couponing, discounting that people have to sign up for you have to opt in to get the discount. It's an autoresponder to that opt-in. You can create really great free resources that pop up on various parts of the website and they can download it. And I know people I have friends who get up as many as 500 emails a day using those types of strategies with websites that are getting 15 or 20,000 visitors per day, which obviously is a lot. The sweepstakes strategy, so it started for me with the first client I ever had in marketing, which was a conference that my father was helped to found in 2003. Between 2003 and 2014 or 15, so about 12 years, they had slowly built an email list of about 12,000. And that was from people going to their website and signing up, which happened a couple times a month, not that many. And then people signing up for their event and then joining the list. So they had a lot of past customers on their list. When I started doing their email marketing in 2005, they had 1,500. So it took a long time to get from 1,500 to 12,000. Then it took me a couple of years to convince them to do a sweepstakes to build their list. And the whole point of it was to build the email list. The sweepstakes was centered on giving away 2 tickets to their event, which happens to be on a cruise ship. So it was basically giving away a cruise vacation. We could have done that by itself and could have marketed it. We were able to market it on Facebook pretty effectively, getting new emails at about between 50 cents and 75 cents each from Facebook ads. So with $2,000 or $3,000 budget, we could have gotten maybe 3,000 or 4,000 new email addresses, which would have helped. It would have been a 30% increase. But making it a step further, we also were working with some social media influencers and some speakers who were coming to the event to help market the event. So I reached out to some of them, asked if they could contribute something to the prize package. So they contributed things like signed books or online classes that they offered, which were ranged in value from like $20 to about $200. And that helped build the value of the prize. It also helped build their brand awareness because they were listed as part of the prize. But I also, as part of my campaigns with them, I asked them to add in two messages on social media and, if possible, an email blast about the sweepstakes. So that allowed us to reach their fans and their followers in an authentic way. It gave them something else to talk about when it came to promoting the event, and that worked really well. And to take it even one step further, we sent some of them a small amount of money to do a boosted post on Facebook, and that really tipped the needle over to being extremely successful. So some of those partners did a $100 boosted post and reached large followings because they had large social followings. Some of them had 100,000, 200,000 fans on Facebook. So those boosted posts to their own fans had a really good reach because people were engaging when they were excited. They were tagging their friends. They were commenting about how much they wanted to win. And this partner was saying, you can join me and you can here's a chance to win it for free instead of paying the full price. And so that really got a lot of people excited. And then it ended up getting 9,000 email addresses, and we only spent about $2,000 on advertising. That's a really good result. And then the following year we did it again with a slightly larger budget, and we got 13,000 emails. We did it the following year with a slightly larger budget and some increasingly larger and more engaged partners, and we got 22,000 emails. So each year our email list basically almost doubled from 12,000 now to 53,000 after 3 years of doing it. The email list is now so successful along with the partners, that we haven't had to run the contest the last 2 years because we can sell the event out before the summer, which is when we normally even would run the contest.
Yeah.
So the contest is really not that, we've stopped doing it because it takes a lot of work to do one, and it takes a budget to market it, and not only time but money. And so we will bring it back around if and when we can do a larger event.
Yeah. So the reason I wanted Justin to share this is because I wanted everyone to get sort of a picture of how, when you're doing digital marketing, you've got all these things that come together based around a really clear goal, which was to build the email list, right? And that email list has now become a way to really actually sell out the event.
Yes.
To a certain extent. So taking it from 12,000 emails to 50-some thousand emails, it really created a world where, again, you don't have to give things away anymore because essentially you've built that relationship with
And we
everyone.
get a lot more sales when we send an email to 50,000 people. We get sometimes like 1,000 to 2,000 clicks on the registration links in those emails, whereas before we might get like 200. So that's an exponential increase in the potential sales volume from one sales email we can send out. Also, another value of these kind of event, sweepstakes, is if you have a large social media following, but you are growing tired of spending money to reach them on the social platform, you can put a lot of money into like reaching them for the sweepstakes or the contest and gather email addresses from your own fans. So that gives you another way to communicate with them more frequently. So for example, the cruise conference had 50,000 social media followers. We targeted those people. We captured thousands of them onto the email list. And now when we send emails out, we can reach those people, the ones who've opted in to the sweepstakes. And so they're more likely probably to take action and buy a ticket from an email they see than from the Facebook version of that same promotion. And we can do that for pennies. That's why the ROI is so much better.
Yeah.
It's just so much, for the cost to do a Facebook boosted post is what we pay per month for the email subscription. So we can send it to everybody for less money than it would cost to reach them, again, even though they're our own fans on Facebook.
Yeah. Well, and I think, too, it's important to remember, like I said, that strategically when you're running an email campaign and you're doing, let's say, any email automation to engage those people and get them to take further actions, it's really important to think about their whole journey through the experience. So as Justin's describing, sometimes when you're doing, targeted email marketing automation, what you're doing is actually using other strategies to drive people into those signups in some way. And so I think there's lots of different strategies out there that we see on a regular basis are successful. I think contests and sweepstakes are a big one. I will say not every contest has to be as big and a cruise vacation. I've seen lots of success. We recently had a panel with someone who was talking about simple Instagram contests that they've been running with local partners, and their entire business model is around their email list and sending out this daily email that tells everybody what's happening in Asheville, right? So essentially, like, they're using giveaways in a much smaller sort of package style, but I think the truth is they're coming up with things that people get excited about in the local community. So their giveaways are cool. They're like trendy. They're things that people want. So I think whether you're going to give away something big or small, it's really about, are people going to get really excited about it? I've seen some brands with such good followings on social media that when they give away their own merchandise, everybody gets excited. And it's because they have that relationship with those people to kind of make that happen. But you wouldn't have that relationship with someone who'd never heard of you before. So it's just really understanding that, all of the other digital marketing you're doing can be put together with an email marketing idea. And you can move people, like I said earlier, through this customer journey where you get them to engage with different things. And I think, I've seen some great campaigns, especially with automated emailing, that have to do with selling online classes, selling different programs, getting people to download things from your website, so really thinking about kind of a content strategy that includes what are you willing to give away and what are you actually selling and how can you flow people from one to the other. And that's where I think email marketing can become really powerful. And I think, as I said earlier, regardless of the age group that you're reaching, in a lot of ways, email and social media can work really well together. A lot of times we want to pit these strategies against each other. Like one is cooler than the other, or One is, what all the young kids are doing now or whatever it is. But we actually find out the most successful people are working these things together in a real flow. And every brand that's kind of successfully doing this is, I think, spending some time like testing it out. Like you said, it took you, 3 years to get to a point where you're going from getting 13,000 emails to getting 22,000. That's a pretty big leap, but it took you a little while to like figure out how to really enhance everything to the point where you would get the biggest result.
And largely it was, convincing the client to increase their budget to put behind it. Went from like less than $2,000 the first year to close to 4,000 the last year, and the results were pretty much in line with that growth of the budget. But also it was, trying to be creative about adding new promotional partners and kind of in some cases getting lucky with one new partner just kind of crushing it and getting like tons of people. We had one new partner the third year that was in Australia, and he wasn't very good at communicating with me on email, so he just promoted it without like doing the full promotion. They didn't really do it exactly how I would have wanted him to do it. But he still got like probably 3,000 or 4,000 email addresses from one organic Facebook post.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, so really thinking about how you're going to bring these strategies together with the other things that you're doing to promote yourself online is important. And I also think it's really key to remember that when you want people to sign up for something, download something, take an action, we have to make sure that where they're doing that is really easy to do. It can be done on any device. So especially if you're doing list building kind of campaigns, if you're going to drive people to your website, like what Justin's talking about, and have somebody sign up, or you're going to drive them to your website so they can sign up and get a free guide or a free ebook or a free coupon or whatever it is, to me, you really want to make sure that you've tested that experience. You know that it's easy, clear, fast, all of that stuff. We have so many different things now we can do for email signups. So people have pop-ups. They have things that go across the top of the website, things that go across the bottom of the screen. We've got things that are in the sidebar, in the footer, in the header. We've got all these different ways to try to make it easy for people to sign up. And a lot of those things, you just want to make sure that they're working properly, that a few people on your team or you yourself have tested them, and that people can kind of do it instantly. And make sure that the copy you're writing around those calls to action and the copy inside the email is really, really clearly demonstrating what the value is, why it's relevant, why it matters to people. There's a lot of great examples, and some of the ones I've shared here, like that longer autoresponder sequence, it gives you like a timeline. Like, how do you tell people they only have a certain amount of time to sign up and then it's closed? And sometimes that generates more urgency.
Definitely.
So you get more people to actually sign up for the list. So again, it's very strategic. It's about thinking how you do these things. If there's some core things that I want you to keep in mind when it comes to overall email marketing strategy that I think really impacts the automation experience, one is, like I said, you have to really consider growing your email list a priority. I just feel like not every company prioritizes growing their email list as a top thing that they're doing. That's fine. Sometimes it's a secondary goal. So it might be something that you're working on, but it's just not the primary thing that you're focused on now. So I don't think you need to dig into doing this until you feel like that email marketing is a really positive tool that you want to use, especially for those of you who are smaller businesses or marketing departments of one person, right? You can't do everything. So if you're already managing social media and you're doing lots of other stuff, it's really about figuring out, does email fit into that mix? And if it does, then you really have to start having this focus that growing your list is part of the end goal that you have, whether it's quarterly or for the whole year. I think email list segmentation is really key. So one of the things that I'm a big believer in when you look at the most successful email marketing automation, it's because it's really focused on what Justin said. A person completes an action or experiences in a quote unquote event, and then they get a series of really relevant emails that are related to what they just did. And so don't think of drip campaigns or marketing automation as sort of broad and generalized. I think, when it's too broad, again, it doesn't feel urgent to the person. It doesn't feel like they have to have it. It doesn't feel Like it's personalized to them, and their expectation a lot of times is that it's pretty personalized. So this is something most email marketing programs offer now, right? Is this ability to segment. And some of them are already building in basic segments for you. So you might see that, and again, sometimes you have to have the paid upgrades on a tool to get this kind of access, but you'll see that it'll show you everybody who hasn't opened an email in 3 months. It'll show you everyone who is subscribed at a certain time. If you're tagging things, like for instance in MailChimp, we can tag things. So I'm working on an email campaign right now where everybody who signs up for our list, we immediately have them identify themselves as a member or a non-member of the organization. Because the email drip campaigns that we want to send out to members are different than the ones we want to send to non-members. The non-members need a drip campaign about how to become a member, right? But my members don't need that. We need them to do other actions and other things. And so we've immediately kind of been setting up MailChimp so that we can identify them when they sign up immediately into those two segments, because it really is a totally different messaging that's going to go out and a whole different strategy that's going out to each of those groups. And then test and identify what's most effective. So I really want to make sure everybody understands. I feel like in the email marketing world, just like everything else that I'm doing these days, there's no clear pathway to winning. A lot of times you take the basic principles that we're talking about, you put together an idea and you run it and you see what happens. And so don't get caught up in overcomplicating things at first. Think about how you can, run a few campaigns. We had a student in here a few weeks ago, and he's going to be running his first sort of automated campaign coming up for email. And essentially what I really encouraged him to do was, since he's got these new people that are helping him on his staff now to do it, to run like 2 or 3 and to take the email list that he's built and to separate it out in 3 different ways so that it's nice and segmented. And then to really run those simultaneously and see which segment of the list responds the best to the offer. I feel like that we're going to learn a lot the first time they run that through and see what happens. And then make sure that you're tracking and monitoring things, because a lot of these systems, all the tracking's built in. It's free. It doesn't cost anything. You're going to be able to see open rates, unsubscribes. You're going to see where they clicked. All of that stuff is pretty much in the system. And so you should be able to easily see kind of what's getting the most attention in the layouts of your emails. You can definitely see in your drip campaigns and your automation which emails get the biggest response, right? You can even see like which subject lines out of all these different dripped emails are working the best. And that allows you to maybe refine and strengthen the automation that you've already set up. So before we get into some resources, I want to just open up and make sure there's no additional questions about this. I know there's a lot here we could dig more deeply into, and I've given you a ton of resources that you'll be able to explore. Let's see this question. It's from Dale. If you sell capital equipment that has a long sales cycle, how would you alter your approach to reaching new customers and making sure they take a look at your business for their equipment needs? So, Dale, to answer that question, I think we have to understand a little bit more about how you're approaching them now. Like, where does that sales cycle start? Are you using email at all already to connect with folks? So if you want to answer that, I believe you can type it right in here. Because to me, how would you alter the approach is hard to say if we don't know what the approach is. I do think in longer sales cycles, email drip campaigns can be really valuable because you can schedule them to go over a longer period of time.
Yeah, you just have to create some sort of reason for them to get on the list in the first place, and that could be some sort of an equipment guide or something that would allow them to. You could could build an email list at a trade show by having them opt in to. I don't know exactly what you can give away, or a lot of times at trade shows, people do things like giving away something that's not related to their own products when they're in this kind of high-end market. Like, for example, this is very different but parallel thing. If you were, trying to market like fractional jets, you might go into this like luxury travel conference. trying to get people to get onto your drip campaign, you might give away a watch or something that's not the same as giving away your high-end product, but you give away something people would want. And then the people who sign up for that sweepstakes or giveaway would then get a drip campaign about your main product, which could be, information about your product comparisons or announcements of new innovations in the product line, new products in the product line, seasonal discounting or promotions. If you know a certain time of year is important for the purchasing cycle, whether that's the beginning of the fiscal year or a certain season when the equipment is needed more often because of it's being used more frequently, you could line up your email campaigns around those times of year too, which wouldn't really be automation, that'd be more of the newsletter.
Yeah. I would say there's a couple things I want to comment on that I think would be good ideas. One, I'm excited when you say that you have direct contact with people, because to me what that means is you've got one or more people on your team that are working these long sales cycles and they actually know what the customers need. Right? So maybe that's, maybe they need some sort of reminder about servicing. Maybe they need some sort of checklist of how to know something about the equipment and what kind of maintenance it needs.
Maybe they need webinars to learn more about it.
Yeah, maybe they need some sort of, interaction with you all, like a webinar, where you can, give them some super useful information. So I think the first thing to do is everybody who's interacting with the customers, what is it that you think they really need that they're not getting now from you or maybe from other competitors? And, what kind of content could you create that would really save them time, make it easier for them, or just become like sort of a reminder? Because I think you could get them to sign up for those things and have that as a drip campaign. I also think with trade shows, that's a huge opportunity to collect information, whether you're doing it by paper or you actually have some sort of computer or tablet where they can sign up. And I think you basically want to have that face-to-face at the trade show to say, here's an incentive to sign up for our list. And then what I love to do, because I work with a lot of artists who do different sort of arts and crafts shows, right? So we really talk a lot about how when you leave that show, you implement those emails into your system if they're not already. Because I have a lot of artists now that are just collecting emails on an iPad during the trade show itself or during the event itself. And then from there, they get a really great drip campaign saying, first, it was so great to meet you at this event. Thanks so much for being there. Here's, whatever, a 10% off, or here's, a free something or other that was sort of the agreement of why they signed up. Maybe it's even for different trade shows, it can even be just a giveaway in general. Mm-hmm. It doesn't always have to be your own product or your own service. It could just be that at a trade show, you had people signing up to win something. Just make sure whatever they're winning is awesome. Right? And going to get them excited to kind of connect with you. But I love doing those drip campaigns after events because it's a way to sort of personally say, we're so glad you came by the booth. We're so glad this and that. And kind of within that first few days after an event, I think you're top of people's mind. You have a great chance at converting them.
Yeah. One last thing on this one. We're almost out of time, but one last thing is that sometimes in the business to business world, if you're big enough, you can do an industry survey and you can gather data about equipment investment and age of the equipment and equipment needs. A lot of people do it in like salary and benefits, like gathering data about salary and benefits from the industry and publishing a survey, publishing the results of the survey. That will really help you stand out and put you top of mind without having to be in the sales mode all the time.
Yeah. So the last question that Caroline just asked was, do you see a lot of unsubscribes after a contest or a sweepstakes?
Yeah, you definitely will see some, but it's usually only a small percentage of the people who signed up. You also see a lot of unsubscribes if you get too aggressive with any of your campaign strategies. If you're sending out too many partner emails, you see unsubscribes go up. If you're sending out just emails that aren't about what the person signed up for in the first place. We've actually had spam complaints on our cruise email list when we tried to promote other organizations that were not really closely affiliated with us. As a partnership, we kind of went a little too far doing a dedicated email, and we had a spike in unsubscribes and a spike in complaints, which actually got our account temporarily suspended one time in the past.
Yeah.
And with our current largest client is a conference in San Francisco. Last winter, a year and a half ago, they were doing more and more partner promotions, and we started noticing that the email unsubscribes were going up, and we were actually able to look at who unsubscribed and check if they had purchased before, and we were losing a lot of customers. So we had to change our strategy.
Yeah, no, and that's really important information. Like I said, to the point of tracking and monitoring, that's really important to pay attention to, because you don't want to be driving your own customers out of your email list because they don't feel like it's valuable. So I think that's just a key thing to remember. And this goes back to just the comment about how it's really better to build a smaller list of people who are really interested in what you're offering than to try to go broad and just throw everybody in there, whether they're interested or not. So I think that has a lot to do about how you approach people, the incentives you give them, and that when you're making those connections, you're really trying to connect with people and say, we want you to be a part of our network for this reason.
Yeah, when your
And
list gets
hopefully that
big, it
reason
gets
matters.
expensive. I mean,
Yeah.
we spend between $2,000 and $4,000 a year for the several different businesses that we work for that have over 40,000 email addresses.
Yeah.
Depending on the system, MailChimp is like $300 or $400 a month at that email list size.
Yeah. So again, we're going to wrap up because I know everybody wants to get out of here. But if you do have any questions, I'm glad to stay for an extra few minutes. Just so you know, I've included some really great resources at the end of this presentation for you to dig into to learn more about this. If you're in the Asheville area, also, you can save the date for our August 13th boot camp on local SEO. So you'll have a slide here where if you're in Western North Carolina or close to Asheville or would like to take a trip to Asheville, you could come join us on August 13th to participate in our half-day boot camp. We always love to see people that connect with us online in person. But the other things that I've included for you to dig into more are what email tools are the most popular. There's so many of them, especially for marketing automation. Marketing automation is kind of a buzzword. I would say HubSpot is one of the leaders of that world. But there's so many different tools at different prices for different size lists. These are two of the best reviews I've seen for 2019, so that you can go in and look at what people suggest. There's also some great resources just about really digging into email marketing overall, if this is something newer to you, or if you've been doing it for a while and you want to explore more about segmentation, getting better open rates, writing subject lines. These are great resources for that as well. And so we really appreciate having everyone here with us today. And thanks, Jenna has shared the bootcamp ticketing page. So the tickets, like I said, are available on Eventbrite. You can click the link in our slides as well to get there. But overall, like I said, we really appreciate everyone being here. Please feel free. My email is in this presentation to reach out to me at any time if you have additional questions. And as we always say, you do amazing things. More people should know. So good luck with all of your email work, and I wish you lots of success. And I hope that we'll see you next time for our digital drop-in in August.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks, everyone. Great questions, great conversation. Thanks for putting it all together.
Have a great day.